asked me to negotiate a possible payment plan or a settlement. They offered us a 2-year payment plan of a discounted rate of $48,000, which would be $24,000 a year for next year and the year after. The board then asked me, what if we paid it all this year if the monies are available after the audit of 16-17? The monies are available, so I called M&J again. I said, what would your discount be if we paid all of it this year before June 30th? They said the final bill would be $46,000. So they discounted it from 53 to 46. So I'm asking the Board of Finance to release $46,000 to pay, I'm sorry, yeah, $46,000. The original invoice was 48, but now they've discounted it even further if we pay a 1 lump sum this year. So I'm asking for $46,000 from remaining funds from the fiscal year 2016, 2017. And I've been told by Lisa, and Diane, did you verify what the balance was from last year? It was about $60-some-odd thousand. So the money's all there.
You say there's been an audit of this to be sure that...
No, there was an audit of the budget expenditure.
Okay. My question is, how do we know that this is a legitimate request? They really were underfunded $56,000.
We did double check, triple check, and we owe them the money. They had these midday runs, which they failed to bill us.
That's what I thought you meant by the audit.
No, I couldn't ask the town for money until the audit was completed. And the audit, I guess, was late this year. They didn't complete the audit until January. At some point in time, they asked for an extension.
That is correct.
So the 56,600 is leftover money in the budget?
The
after the audit?
56.6 is what we owed them.
Is what they owe the
I've
county.
negotiated 2 subsequent prices that are less than that based on a 2-year installment payment. And now they've given us another discount if we pay it this year. Total price would be $46,000. We would save $600 if we pay it this year.
So you are confident that these are legitimate charges?
Yes, I am, sir.
Okay, that's all I need.
And the board has already, the Board of Education has said that they would like to pay it,
Yes. Sonia, do you want
okay?
to?
Just a quick question,
Mike?
just so I
Okay.
understand. So the money you're asking for is money that was left over from the Board of Ed budget last year?
Yes, sir.
That came back to our general fund? It wasn't put into like the other fund, correct?
I don't know where.
You know what I'm talking
I
about, the other
can't answer
fund?
that, I
1%?
Lisa would have to answer that.
I believe she said it went into the general fund, which is why we
It is
thought-
the general fund, okay. So it's money that came back from the school,
Yes.
but was put into the, deposited into the general fund. But it is leftover money from the school budget.
Yes.
Does that clarify, Steve?
Diane, is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay.
I got a question on, maybe I'm mistaken, I thought that any leftover money from the budget was gonna go into a capital improvement.
You are correct, but
So why did this go in?
this wasn't, no, and I believe Lisa, I don't know exactly why she didn't, but she put it into the general fund instead of putting it into that fund for the school, unless she knew that this was coming up, I don't know. Lisa's not here, so I can't ask her. Diane, do you know?
I believe we have to request that the money go in to be unexpended, it's not an unexpended fund.
Was any money put in after last
And I-
budget year?
Yeah, we have money, that there is a balance in there from the prior year, yes.
But there wasn't money put in after the last?
There wasn't
budget
any
year?
money coming from 2016-17.
Do you know how much is in there now?
Before, it was 89,821.
Okay. So, it's been a while since we approved that fund, but that fund was set up in such a way that that was to meet needs of the school that weren't budgeted for or whatever.
Correct.
So, I don't know, is it proper to use that money for this bill? Or would the money come from the excess?
That could have been where Lisa was going to get it from, and I again, can't answer that because I haven't talked to her about it.
I think we should pay the bill.
I do too.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah,
You want to
I
make that
think,
in form of a motion?
I make a motion that we
Jane,
authorize payment of the bill.
I don't
This is not on the agenda, and this is a special meeting, I don't know if this can go over right now.
I think Aaron's right. Plus, if we're gonna pay the bill, it would come out of the general fund, which means that anything that we pay to this amount would have to go to a town meeting, correct?
Well, it's gonna be actually, it's the presentation of the Board of Education and the Board of Selectmen. We can,
I don't think we could do
no, I
this
don't
business
think we
on
can
it.
either. I think we've gotta make a motion to add it to the agenda.
I don't think we can add to the agenda on a special meeting,
You
can
can't have
we?
this.
No, we can only move it around.
But I think in terms of the ruling of the chair, behind this business of presentation by the Board of Education in the way that we see fit, this to me is the legitimate part of the presentation and arrangement.
Yeah, but this is something above and beyond the presentation of next year's
You
budget.
just presented it by definition. It doesn't say limited to, or.
We can do that, Dave, I'm just saying, this is a presentation of the 18-19 budget, and this has nothing to do with that. So I think if we do it now, I think we'd have to unravel it. Don't we have another meeting next week?
We have another meeting Monday.
Can we possibly add that on to,
We can add it to the agenda and then we can approve it Monday for you.
That'd be
Is that,
terrific.
is that a
That's
time
terrific.
enough?
That's
Yeah.
terrific.
Timely enough for you? Okay.
Absolutely.
That would be the better way to go. Thank you, Steve. So if we put it on the agenda for Monday night.
Thank you for your consideration. The second item is a little bit more complicated and quite a bit more money. I promise you, I won't always come asking for money.
Yes, you will.
Always for the kids.
Sure you will.
I won't- Shh. Okay.
we know how this works.
Excess costs, for those of you who don't know. When we have costs for special education that exceed 5 times or 4 times what we pay for regular education kids, we can apply to the state for a grant to offset those costs. Typically, we receive anywhere from $200,000 to $300,000 in these grants from the state as reimbursement for those expenses which exceed significantly what we spend for regular ed children. Most of these kids are placed out of district. They have significant needs that we cannot accommodate here. Some of these kids are there for residential. They're there 24/7. Some of these kids are day treatment students. They're bused to, they're bused from. But these kids, we incur significant costs with these kids. Last year, 16-17, when Chris checked what we spent, we were overspent. We overexpended that line for tuition for out-of-town tuition students, specifically special education, by over $300,000, $400,000. As of today, if you look at the back of that one page I just gave you, you'll see 2 areas shaded in yellow. This year, we are projected to be $370,000 in the hole this year for special education tuition and $80,000 in the hole for transportation. Tuition and transportation costs for these kids, which exceed what we spend for regular education kids, we qualify for that excess cost grant. Now, last year I said we were overexpended by $350,000, $400,000. The town received an excess cost grant of at least $300,000, $350,000. The Board of Ed could have asked for that money last year, but they didn't need it, so they didn't ask for it. This year, we need it. So the way Lisa has configured this account, we can ask for last year's money for this year's expenses. So what I'm asking for in that second part of that letter is that the Board of Finance reappropriate $300,000 to help offset our costs that were in the hole already, $370,000 and $80,000, and that's as of March 1st. It could get worse. The end result is, the 2 positives about this are, 1, if you reappropriate this money to the Board of Education, it increases our baseline for this account. This account, which right now has $815,000 appropriated, would then become $1,115,000. So what does that do? Well, for future years, it will keep that baseline going up. So you won't have the problem where one year we could be asking for $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 more in the budget presentation than what we actually have spent in previous years, because you never increased that baseline. So that's one of the reasons why we're asking for this. The second reason is, we all know that you're expecting a return of funds from the Board of Education to help offset the loss of ECS money, Education Cost Sharing Grant. My hope and my promise, if I were still here June 30th, that if you give us this $300,000 and we add it to this line item, as long as these two deficits don't continue to grow, we're going to give it back to you. We'll return it at the end of the fiscal year. Again, with the caveat that we don't have more deficits built into this account. But my main goal is to have an account that is relevant and is actual to what is going on in the school district. You will see when I make the presentation tonight for next year's budget, I've already increased this account $200,000 for next year. And you can see that's not enough based on what deficits we have this year. But again, I'm counting on excess cost grants to come in this year that we can use for next year. It's a little hazy about how the state gives us the money and how we can use the money, but it's all legit, it's all legal, it's all appropriate. But my main goal is to have accounts that reflect what we're spending and have you see a baseline that's relevant and accurate as the years go on.
When you ask for just to reappropriate,
Yes,
we're reappropriating money that you're saying
you already received.
we already received and was given back by the school last year?
No. You
Then how
received,
could we reappropriate it?
because it's sitting in an account that Lisa has identified as an excess cost revenue account. If you approve this, that money comes and gets reappropriated to the board budget. That line item then becomes 1.15 million rather than the 850 million that it is, 850,000 that it is right now.
I'm gonna put it in simple terms, so I understand it, and if you guys understand it differently. Is that every year you guys get your budget, you pretty much can do what you need to do with it. At the end of the year, if any money's left over, it goes back to the town budget. So, if this money didn't come back to the town budget from last year, how would we have it?
It came from the state,
For the 2016-17?
yes.
But if you didn't, because it came from the state, it was already in your budget?
No,
And it was in, so you're saying that there was
it's a
no
separate
revenue
pot
last
of,
year?
it's a separate pot of money that comes from the state that Lisa puts aside, so that at the end of the fiscal year, if the Board of Ed budget is in the negative, the Board of Ed can ask the town, Board of Finance, to reappropriate some or all of that money. Last year, the board didn't need it, so they didn't ask for it. Now we need it.
So it's sitting in that fund?
Yes.
The money you didn't ask for last year?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you said that you're confident that the money is gonna come back, but at the end of the fiscal year, that we'll get this money back?
As long as costs in those two accounts don't continue to...
Well, my question is, you know, given the budget issues with the state, what kind of guarantee is there that this money's gonna get appropriated? I guess there were already $200 million deficit for
The
the
money's already there. It's from last year.
Okay.
Now, can we vote on this tonight, or we have to wait until Monday?
No,
We
Monday.
can't do anything.
We can vote on it.
No.
This is not on the agenda. If you want to vote on it, you can, but I wouldn't
Oh,
recommend it.
here we go again.
We're fine with Monday.
I make a motion, we move this to Monday.
I don't think we have to move anything, because it's not on
And
the
again-
agenda.
Oh, okay.
Dr. Smotas, we have to ask you, I mean, a few more days is not gonna hurt
No.
anything, am I correct?
Absolutely not.
So if we vote on these two items on Monday evening, again, that will have to go on the agenda. for
If we
Monday.
could get clarification from Lisa on these accounts and the money
I
and
will
everything.
plan on it.
And I think there needs to be a little more discussion.
I'm sure
on that.
that, I know that Paul has checked with Lisa a couple of times, and we've had meetings on it, and it's definitely what he said.
It's good. I'm a little disappointed that this is February 28th, and I'm getting a letter that's dated February 8th asking for this, because I think if we received it earlier, we maybe could have asked proper questions, asked Lisa or whatever, and had this information. Unless everybody else already had this letter? No?
No, tonight's the first I've seen of it.
Okay. Like I said, it's a 20-day-old letter that I think if we had it ahead of time, we'd be much better prepared.
Well,
to-
actually, it's not that unusual, because when we spoke and we came up with the date of tonight, I think that's when all the letters, everything, all the communication was put aside for this evening.
I understand, but
Instead of
this is not
sending
about
it early.
next, this is not about next year's budget. That's
I'm
why-
sorry?
This is about asking for money that was appropriate.
Yes, but I think that the interpretation of this evening's meeting was also these two items.
Sure.
Okay, the one thing, if I had known that, I would have put it on the agenda. but I didn't.
Right, we believe that we could talk about this evening.
Yeah,
That
Well,
was part
we
of
will
what our
definitely-
goal was.
yeah.
Plus, I had to get authorization from the
We will
board
definitely
to ask for it.
tackle these two things Monday
Yeah.
night.
I mean, just from my perspective, I've sat up in these meetings for the last 5 years.
Right.
This is an extremely unusual request, so I think getting it ahead of time and being able to prepare and get the proper information is important.
I will check with Lisa, but Monday night you will have, Tuesday morning you'll have an answer.
Can I just ask one further question?
By all
regarding, You say we'll get some or all of this back if your costs in the category of the special ed and transportation don't increase. Are you counting on another excess spending check from the state?
For this year,
Yeah.
that could be used next year. So the money that we're in the hole right now, the 370 and the 80,
Right.
the state will give us a percentage of that, assuming that the state budget doesn't go in for it.
Well, it is, of course.
Yeah, well-
Every day, it's worse, so.
There are no assumptions anymore there.
No.
But if you look at this single page that I just talked about, with the shaded areas,
Yeah.
if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, as of today, if the fiscal year ended, I would be returning $500,000 to the board. If we get this other 300,000 and costs don't, increase for special ed, or we don't have an emergency, then that 300 could be added to the 500. But as of today, if you took a picture, we're gonna return 500,000.
But you're also making the assumption that you're getting all the money that you was budgeted to you, correct?
Yes.
Because right now, the state is saying we're down $1.2 million on the educational cost.
Which is why we have a budget freeze, a hiring freeze, and we're accumulating the money. This
No, I'm
is,
just making the point, I agree with you, and I really appreciate what you're doing, I think it's great. But you're not in the hole of $370,000, you're actually in the hole about $1.2 million, because we haven't gotten that money from the state.
No,
The state
Steve, you're
got
wrong.
promised
They're
it.
not going to absorb all the 1.2.
No, I understand that, I'm just saying that that's a number based upon them getting what they were budgeted for, which we're not gonna get.
Right now, that's the number, but that hasn't been finalized either.
Did you need one back?
Okay?
okay. In lieu of a PowerPoint, which was a special request from Jane, handouts, talk about our budget request, my budget request to the Board of Education, which was final and approved Monday night by the Board of Education. So this is no longer the superintendent's budget, it's the Board of Ed budget. Second page is the budget calendar. Now, one thing I want to bring to your attention, you had talked about having a hearing or a meeting on April 18th. That's school vacation week, so if you would consider changing that date, it would be helpful, because I'm not sure which of our staff members could possibly attend that hearing on the 18th.
Well, I know that the March 7th has already been put in, and that's in stone. As far as the April 18th, we can change that date, because we haven't put it into the town calendar yet.
Okay. Just
So
wanted
that
to
will be
alert you
changed.
to that.
And what would you like to see? The week before or the week after?
You know what, that's a great question, Jane, because I'm not gonna be here.
What would you like, the week before or the week after?
So, I want to introduce everyone to Mr. Steve Macchio. Steve is the superintendent-elect. He will start as superintendent on March 12th. I will work with him that first week in the transition, but I want to introduce Steve to you, so maybe he can give you a better date than I would. Or Sonia, but we can get back to you on that.
Yes. Actually, you can poll everyone and find out and get back to me on that. Don't be too long, because we do have to put it in the calendar.
Absolutely.
We have our dates too. Thank
Okay,
you.
page 3 is our mission and belief statement. You'll find this all over the school district, all over school boards, you'll find it on the website. I'm not gonna read it to you, insult your intelligence, but this is what we stand for and what we believe in.
I'm on the Board of Education.
Page 4, I want to talk about analyze historical spending. This year, the schools have 7 new administrators out of 11. We have new assistant principals, we have new principals, we have a new finance director, I'm the new superintendent, you have another new superintendent coming. You've had 3 business managers in the last 3 years. Continuity has been difficult to achieve. So, being what I feel that I'm very strong in school finance, I decided to work with Diane and Chris and the principals to try and get a better handle on what's in the budget and why it's in there. And what we did is we went through every single salary account, benefit account, supply account, purchase service account, equipment account, to see, are we properly funded? Are we overfunded? Are we underfunded? We made a huge number of adjustments. How many, Chris, do you have a wild guess how many accounts we changed out of the thousands of accounts? Probably hundreds of accounts. I am confident that we have cleared up probably 90 to 95% of the accounts that were out of whack, or out of balance. Some were out of whack by $100, some by $5,000, some by a lot more than that. Because people were not in the right accounts in terms of salaries, supplies were not in the right accounts in terms of the right school, or whether it was grant funded. But I can assure you that the Stafford Public Schools budget is in a lot better place than it was. And a lot of that is not human error or human fault, it's the lack of continuity that's happened in the business office, the superintendent's office, whatever. The one constant, Chris, thank God she's here, because she has been the historian.
There might be a
to
few
help me.
others.
And a few others, but mainly this young lady.
Thank you, Chris.
One of the other areas that I rely on our staff, my staff, new principals, new curriculum director, new business official, identify programmatic needs. What can we do to make Stafford a better school district? And we've come up with a couple of things, which I'm going to talk about next week, but not tonight. One of which is a total revamping, reconfiguration of the middle school and the high school. Scheduling, staffing, whatever. Major project. We went through 40+ iterations before we came down to what we think is the best way to service kids at the middle school and the high school. And we've averaged out and smoothed out our class sizes. It was a monumental task. High school principal, assistant principal, middle school principal, assistant principal, Jen, our curriculum director, all sat in, took this jigsaw puzzle apart, put it back together. And you know the best part? It's less expensive. Other programmatic needs. You've seen my presentation and discussion about special ed tuition and transportation. We service a lot of kids that are sent out of town. Well, our new special ed director, Jolene Piscatella, another new administrator, took it upon herself, working with some of the principals, myself, Chris, Diane, the business manager. What can we do to bring kids back? How can we service some of these kids that are costing us $50, $75, $100, $200,000 out of district? How can we bring them back? So Jolene has come up with a program, programmatic need and a programmatic solution to service these kids little by little, baby steps. We bring 1, 2, 3, or 4 of these kids back. We hire the teachers. We make some changes to the building facility in terms of doors, exit doors, quiet rooms, etc. And we service these kids. Well, if we bring, her estimate is if we bring these 4 kids back, we can hire all the staff, and we can do what we need to do in the facility in terms of installing doors, and at least break even, if not save money. And I will talk about that next week too. But those are 2 major initiatives that were accomplished this year. Mandated services, you know, you hear the word unfunded mandates. There's a lot of them. I'm not going to bore you with them, but we have a lot of mandates we don't get money for from the state and the federal government. Areas of increasing student need. We have a lot of fragile kids here. Dealt with one emergency this morning at the middle school. I'm going to choke up about it, but we do what we can based on the resources we have for all our kids. And a lot of our kids are needy kids. And I can't go into the specifics, but trust me, there's a lot of kids in Stafford that need help. And there's a lot of kids who rely on us and you to provide the resources to help them. Safety and school security. If you haven't watched TV or watched the news, what's going on? Everybody's concerned about safety. Parents, kids, there's gonna be walkouts nationwide, March 14th. Kids are gonna protest. Kids are gonna silently send a message, or maybe verbally send a message, or physically send a message by laying on the ground playing dead, that they're scared. They don't wanna go to school in some cases. They don't know what's gonna happen when they go to school. We have protocols in place, we have security systems in place, we have a great police department who's responsive, but we got a big target on Leventhal Road. We got 3 schools in less than 3/10 of a mile. There's a lot of kids up there that we need to keep safe. They feel safe, and Marco, I think, is gonna have some programs next week for the high school kids. Paul's had some we do lockdown drills, we do all we can. But you're gonna see in the budget, there are some additional monies to amplify and to continue to look at our security systems and make sure that our kids and our staff are safe. It's not a lot of money, but it's in there. Questions?
Just wanted to tell you that I did see in the news also that it cost about $300,000 to $400,000, and there's a high school in Nebraska that actually has bulletproof glass. Their teachers have panic buttons, they have smoke canisters in the hallway. They've really been proactive in the school safety. And I didn't know what you were looking at for school safety different.
You know, it's funny you make that statement. The JI called me today, and they want to do an article on what we do in Stafford for safety precautions and safety measures. I can't tell them.
No.
Let the cat out of the bag.
It's true,
Sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry I asked the question. But you're right.
Okay. Budget assumptions. Assumptions and priorities are the framework or the skeleton of the budget. This is what I and the administrators and the teachers and anybody else who had input in this budget bases our requests. Mission goals and values will be adhered to. Safety and health standards will be maintained. Well, maybe we should move, or I should move safety and health standards to #1, because safety is such an issue right now. Stafford facilities and infrastructure will be maintained. We are spending significant monies on the solar project. You have spent significant monies. We have saved significant monies. You have saved significant monies. On this one-page sheet, if you look at the electric account, there was $513,000 budgeted for electricity. Look what we've spent to date, $63,000. That's because of the solar system that this town installed. What's going to happen to the balance? That's going to come back to you to help offset the cost of the solar system. But we have to maintain our infrastructure. There's a project that I don't even know a whole lot of details about, but we've got to do some work behind the middle school relative to the sewage system. We're going to do that this year if we have enough money, to finish that project without decimating that $500,000 balance that I want to return to the town. As I mentioned before, we looked at every salary account. We made sure everybody's accounted for. We adjusted the salaries for next year based on negotiated contracts and current spending levels. We also put in an estimate for the non-certified, or the people who serve as secretaries, custodians, paraprofessionals, because that contract has not been negotiated yet. So I put an estimate of 2% increase there. Federal and state grants will continue to decrease. Again, these are assumptions. All budgetary accounts have been reviewed to ensure that previous surpluses and deficits have been addressed. Enrollment will remain stable. We have one more kid this year in Stafford than we did last year. I know that's a question that comes up in every Board of Finance meeting that I've ever attended. What's your enrollment? This is the first time I can honestly answer the enrollment's not going down in any district I've worked in the last 15 years. Usually it's going down, your state.
We actually went up as of this last one we polled.
See why she's with me? She keeps me on my toes.
You're up 14, not one.
Whoa!
I know.
What, number 14?
Did we at a bus stop somewhere? Student
First time in a while.
Yeah, student transportation costs will increase by contract, 2.5%. It's a negotiated 5-year contract, we know what it's gonna be next year. And again, I wanna reiterate, if you approve that $46,000 to pay M&J, I thank you, and we won't have to budget money for next year. If you don't approve that, I've gotta add $24,000 to this budget request. Special ed tuition and transportation costs will continue to rise. We know it, it's a fact of life. But if we can get that program and put it in the elementary school and bring back 2, 3, 4 of those kids, we can reduce our costs. Curriculum updates and revisions will continue. Jen Murray, why don't you wave to the board so they can see who you are? This woman is going to bring Stafford into the 22nd century, in the 21st century, but she's a superstar in terms of curriculum. Watch her. But it's going to cost you money.
Not necessarily.
And professional development activities will be scheduled and designed to accommodate student and staff needs. So those are the assumptions that I worked under when I worked with the administrators, teachers, whomever put the budget together. Now budget priorities, page 6. We have to meet all state and federal law. We have to provide a free and appropriate education to all Stafford students. I got in trouble once in East Lyme as superintendent because we had a course, unbeknownst to me, where we asked the kids to pay for the book. It was an English course. And for whatever reason, the teacher asked the kid, okay, here's the book we're going to use for this schedule, and it's going to be $18. Why she did it, I don't know. But I was on Channel 3, Channel 8, Channel 30, because we had asked kids to pay for their books, which is against the law. But I took the bullet. We must provide students with the opportunity to make adequate yearly progress. We evaluate and modify programming at the high school and middle school. I already talked about that. Terrific project. We must continue to hire, train, and retain highly qualified teachers. We only have 2 retirements. So we're only going to hire maybe 2 new teachers next year, unless we have other retirements or resignations or maternity leaves we don't know about. Identify new revenue sources. I don't know if you've heard about this. Medicaid reimbursement. If we provide social services or psychological services or social worker services to kids or special ed services who qualify with their family for Medicaid, whatever we spend on those services, we can ask for reimbursement from the Medicaid program. Now, we've just started to institute this year. It came to my attention a few years ago in other school districts. We're going to do it in Stafford starting, anybody know, April, May? Diane? Diane, do you remember what we, if you look page,
I think the last page is the presentation.
on page 9, Medicaid reimbursement, we are told by the company that's going to help us with this that we are going to get revenues around $100,000 from this Medicaid reimbursement program. If we didn't have that revenue, then the budget would have increased another $100,000. So we're counting that as revenue. Social Security Alternative Plan. Currently, if you're a part-time employee or a seasonal employee, or if you're a substitute teacher, you pay Social Security out of your check and we have to match it. But I brought a program in that I had in another school district. First Selectman Frassinelli was very interested in it. We met with the appropriate people. I think Mary's involved in it now too. We are predicting that we will have a savings there in the Social Security alternative in that instead of paying Social Security 6.2%, bless you, the employee is going to take that 6.2% that would have gone to Social Security and they're going to be able to put it in like a 401k. Oops. How does that save us money? Well, we don't have to do the matching 6.2% to Social Security. So that's going to save us $25,000. So this year, not only are we looking at expenditures, but we're looking at ways to increase revenues. Questions on those?
So the employees are not gonna be eligible for Social Security? Or only what they've paid in from other jobs? Is that-
The people that work for us right now are gonna have a choice as to whether or not they wanna go in this program. But all new employees effective April 1st, substitute teachers, part-time, seasonal, no, they're not gonna be eligible from Stafford. But if they go to another job or work at another school district, who knows if Social Security is gonna be around? That's the
But they're
dilemma.
made well aware that they may have a smaller benefit in the future when they retire.
They might have a larger benefit. This 401K.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, you gotta depend on what the one is.
To provide the requisite level of supplies and equipment. You'll see a reduction in the supply accounts and the equipment accounts for next year's budget. We have a budget freeze this year. People are not knocking my door down to get more supplies and equipment. So I made the assumption that we could cut some money out of those accounts. To ensure Stafford High School graduates are college and career ready, if you follow any of the Board of Ed meetings from September through January or February, Marco, our high school principal, is constantly bringing forward award-winning programs, commendations, letters. Damian Frassinelli was just picked as the Unified Sports Coach of the Year for the Connecticut High School Association. Kids coming out of Stafford High School are well prepared. The high school staff, the high school administration, the people who move these kids through at the elementary school, the principals there, teachers there, middle school, elementary school. The flow is constant, and the flow is positive, and the kids are doing a great job, and the staff's doing a great job. Again, these are priorities to provide necessary resources for Stafford High School accreditation process. That begins next year. That's an expense to the district. We have to bring in a consulting team, and I'll let Steve answer any questions relative to this, because he's going through it at Suffield High School right now. And that's a great asset for us, in that he takes over as superintendent March 12th, and he can help Marco and the high school staff get through the accreditation process next year. But that's an important process. You don't want to lose accreditation. Also, we're going through accreditation for what's called NACI. And Peggy and Anna, the principals at West Stafford and Staffordville, they have to go through this accreditation process. Again, there's some costs involved. And the last one, which I've talked maybe too much about, but I can't emphasize enough, we're going to try and provide in-district special education programs where and when appropriate.
I just have a question on that. You said that there's 2 or 3 kids that you're gonna try to bring back, and there are some startup costs. Will those costs end up being a net positive after the initial costs associated with?
Our hope is yes. If we can get the right kids, the right staff, with the right facility, it'll be cost neutral, or could possibly be a savings. The next page talks a little bit about enrollment, but what you need to understand is that we also send 64 kids out for not only special education, but we send kids to state technical schools. We send kids to Rockville Low-Ag. We send kids to the magnet schools. We have to pay tuition for those kids, and we have to provide transportation. And one of my biggest problems when I have to delay school or cancel school is that Cheney Tech never cancels or delays school. So the parents of kids who we have to transport to those schools get really mad when I cancel school, because there's no transportation for those kids. Those parents gotta figure it out. And I've had more complaints from those parents than any parents in the 5 months I've been here, but rightfully so. But what can I do? Stafford, geographically, is the most unique community I've ever worked in. It's raining next door, and there's a blizzard in Stafford. Control. Increased level of student need. I'm not going to read through this, but you can tell just by looking at the financial statement, we're spending a whole lot of money on special education.
Yeah.
In district, out of district, etc. All right, let's get to the heart of the meat of the matter. Page 9. The increase, dollar-wise, from this year's budget to next year's is $411,145.76. And let's go back to my request for excess cost money. If the baseline is increased $300,000, what would my increase be? 111,156. It'd be almost a zero increase. That's why it's important, I think, that you accurately reflect what your expenditures are by appropriating that $300,000. Because if you don't, every year forward, you're gonna be deeper in the red in those accounts. Where are the big changes? Salaries, $406,000 increase, 2.5%. Basically contracts that we know about and contracts that are going to be negotiated. The rest of what you see, negligible, other than transportation, tuition, and other. $250,000 increase in transportation and tuition, and that's because of our transportation contract with M&J, and $200,000 that I increased the tuition account. Other than that, there's really not a whole lot of increase or much to talk about in this budget. It's all about salaries, and it's all about tuition and transportation. We had flat funding for the most part, all the other accounts. And that's why if you saw today's JI, I think I was quoted as saying I've come in with as lean a budget as possible. Anything beyond this, if there are reductions, we have to look at staff. The last two pages are a little bit more detail about each series of accounts. If you go to the last two pages, it'll show you what this year's budget is, what we're proposing next year, what the difference is. Major account increase that you see is for certified, 111. There's an increase of $423,632.07. This is the page I'm working. I'm sorry, it doesn't have a number on it, but it's the second to last page. Second to last page. Chris wouldn't let me handwrite the number. The other big increase that you would see in benefits, $65,000 for unemployment compensation. We are currently responsible for some employees that left last year. This is nothing that's happened this year. We're still paying for those people. I don't know when those benefits run out. I thought it was 26 weeks, then it was 38 weeks, then it was 42 weeks. These people never go away. But we're still paying for them, and I have to make sure that we have enough money in that account to offset those costs. The federal government seems to keep giving extensions. If you look at repairs and rentals, I've reduced a lot of those accounts. Again, I'm trying to bring in a budget that's reflective of our needs, but also brings us as close as possible to a budget that's not oppressive to the taxpayers of Stafford. If you go to the last page, magnet school tuition, we are reducing by $90,000. Remember I talked earlier about we looked at every single account? Well, this account was over budgeted for years. Why? Well, you never know how many 8th graders are going to go to the magnet school. And the estimates were too large. So I'm accounting for that and reducing that account by $90,000, which is about 9 students. The increase $200,000 in tuition and the increase of $137,000 for transportation, that's contract with M&J Bus Company. And the rest of what you see, pretty flat funded. And in fact, the equipment and the dues and fees accounts, there are no increases, no decreases. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
I have 4 comments and a couple of questions, if that's all right. I want to thank you for the job you did this year as an interim superintendent. It seems to be very thorough, very complete, and very high quality. Secondly, what you're asking for as an increase is certainly justifiable. I mean, it's one of the lowest in senior years. The 2 questions I have, though, first of all, is when I'm looking to make cuts, everyone should understand right now we're all happy because we're using our credit card. Everybody's going ahead like all the state money was there and we don't have a deficit and we're all, everybody's cheery and they have new programs and everything. The bottom line is that the piper is going to come due and we're going to have to pay. Okay? And And people who are used to having no tax increases year after year are gonna get a jolt, if not this time, at least next year, because there's gonna have to be an increase. So my question is this, one of the things we invested a lot of money in for a small town, and it really did, and it bore tremendous fruit, I mean, is the school system. And I think that's one of the critical things in attracting people to any community. Plus, my whole life was changed by access to a good education all the way through from kindergarten to the doctoral level. And I mean, I think there's nothing you can do for anybody to give them a better start. My question is this too low a budget? If you're saying if there's any kind of an increase in several of these categories, would it necessarily mean staff reductions? Because that's the beginning of a real serious erosion of faith in the system and of quality too.
There were a few people unhappy with my comment that was in the JI. I said, if the Board of Finance reduces this budget by 3, 4, 5, 6, 700,000, bodies are going out the door. I believe in transparency, I believe in credibility. I have given you, and I gave the Board of Education, a budget that I think is fair, affordable, and reflects the needs of the district. If you reduce this budget, you have a responsibility to all the taxpayers, not just the parents, and I understand that. But I will say what you just said. Somebody gave me an opportunity to go to school and allowed me to become what I am, good, bad, or indifferent. And I think it's incumbent upon the people who reside in Stafford to pay for the kids in the school right now. Somebody paid for us. We need to pay it forward and take care of these kids. But the long-winded answer to your question is, if you reduce it by who knows what amount of money, the only thing I can recommend to the board, and I might not be here, it's gonna be Steve's responsibility, is positions.
Unfortunately, we're not the ones that necessarily are going to reduce things. If a budget doesn't pass, that's the next, we have to. So that's where we're coming from. If the budget doesn't pass and it does have to be reduced, is it gonna be positions? I mean, are we that close that there's no other way?
Unless something changes, I would say, if I were superintendent in May and the budget referendum failed, and believe me, I would give all my energy to helping it pass. I'd be beating the streets, I'd be in front of Big Y, I'd be in front of McDonald's, I'd be mobilizing the parents. All you need is one more yes vote than no, and you gotta focus on it. And I wouldn't waste my time on the no votes, because you're not gonna change their mind. You need to get the people out who believe in education, who believe in supporting the kids in this town, whether it's park and rec, whether it's education, who knows, you know, all the programs that kids deserve are in this budget, and in your park and rec budget and other parts of the town. We're the it's like the kids in Parkland, Florida Center. They don't have a voice. They can't do anything about guns, gun control, terrorists, shooters. They need adults to speak up for them. You're the adults, we're the adults. We have to protect kids, and we have to educate kids. But the wrong answer is, I think, unless something changes, and there's a significant reduction, it's gonna be positions.
Well, I hope at the public hearings that are coming up, the budget is defended as strenuously as it was tonight, and the increases are demonstrated to people to be contractual, things we have no control over. And that the rest of it, we're holding the line as much as can possibly be done without going backwards. Because the biggest thing is to save, a couple of $100,000 when you lose all the progress you made and spend $3 or $4 million on, previously. I don't wanna see that happen. I don't wanna see any backward movement at all. So I think I like what you said, and I think you sort of answered that question, that you're holding the line on things where we're successful, in other areas like bringing more special education people back to Stafford or increasing security. We have to spend money there because it's necessary. But that's the thing that people should be told at the public hearing. That's exactly why it's this way. And I think majority of people can understand that.
I think one of the greatest examples you have to give people about investment, look what you did with the solar. There's $500,000+ in this budget. We're only spending, as of today, $69,000. We're saving a ton of money, which is paying, it's self-funding.
I think your budget's very good. I mean, it's very little, it shows very little of an increase. You show where those are. And it's not like you're going out and hiring a bunch of people or whatever. And I think it's a great budget. But the reality of it is, and one thing we haven't talked about yet is, with what the state has done as far as the cuts to the town. And from the last thing we read, those cuts are supposed to be here next year. That means even if you're flat funded, and even if the town's flat funded, that's a 2 mil increase to the taxpayers. And that's without any additional money. And that's the part that we're gonna have the hard time with. Because like I said, it's not that you're spending a lot more money, or anybody's spending a lot more money, the state's taking it back. So, I mean, the town has been lucky with mill rate increases in the recent past, but a 2 mil increase is a big jump. That is gonna be the hard thing to get through.
I can't prove this, but I personally think the governor looked at Stafford and other communities like Stafford and said to his people, let's look for towns that have been managed appropriately, that have nice fund balances, and let's hurt them more. You lost $1.2 million out of $9 million. What did Hartford lose? They have $200 million in ECS. Guess how much they lost? Nothing. Why not work a percentage, a flat percent across the board? That would be more equitable.
Well, that's the big fight. We won't
That
know
is the
until
fight that's
November who's
going on
gonna
right
win
now.
As far as that goes. The two parties have different looks at it.
And then the state's gonna give Hartford $50 million to bail them out of their bankruptcy. Let Stafford go bankrupt, see if the state helps you. I doubt it. You're too well managed. You have what, $6 million in your undesignated fund? You've done a great job. You did too good a job. You got, you got hurt by it. I think personally, I could never prove it, and I'll say it till the day I die. I think the governor did that to all, you look at all the communities that lost the most ECS money, they're the most well-managed.
Glastonbury,
Glastonbury,
He
Southern,
got hit big time too.
all the communities down in Fairfield County, they're down to zero.
But I do think that Dave's right. I do think if you bring up at the public hearing that most of your increases and the bigger increases are contractual and not really very little you can do about it, I think that would go a long way in people understanding that it isn't pie in the sky, it isn't something that you're trying to have a whole lot of money aside, this is things you've gotta pay.
I will do the same presentation next Wednesday as I did
Right.
tonight.
That's what we're asking, make sure that you bring that up, because I think it's gonna be important, and I think it's gonna be very important.
Is that a well-attended meeting normally?
I'm sorry?
Is that a well-attended meeting?
About 150.
It's generally the same people year after year, but it can be well-attended at times.
That'll be the most vocal people.
Yeah, local.
No,
He said vocal.
Local?
Local.
Well, let me put it this way, yeah, they're vocal too. But generally, no, they're vocal, but I think it's people that are very interested in the community that go. Very interested in what's going on.
If you have any other questions, I know, this is a lot to absorb. Call me, my office tomorrow, Friday, Monday. Chris, if I'm not there, Chris will get the questions. We'll respond to you as soon as possible. I'll send all the responses through Jane, and she can send them out to the board.
Well, I have to reiterate what Dave said. You did a marvelous job on this, so thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
It's very easy to understand, it's very easy to follow,
Not everybody
and I
is.
think the people at Stafford will be very, very happy with it. I know I am.
There's no reason, you told me not to do PowerPoint.
One of the things I really appreciate is the fact that you said you went through all these accounts.
Baseline.
Adjusted.
Okay,
And
for every
look at them
person
all.
like yourself,
I think that was long
educating
overdue,
your
and I think it was
kids.
really
There are kids that I know that, okay?
Thank you. And kudos to all my administrators, new ones especially. I mean, we're forming a team.
Biggest company.
7 out of
Biggest
11.
home.
That's heroic work by these people. And I just want to thank them before we.
It seems like it's working.
It's getting there. The first few months, I'm sure everybody was struggling.
I'm sure.
We're getting there. Thank you.
But thank you very, very,
I'm sure
very
that,
much.
I'm sure that 85 to 90% of them, I'm just concerned about those.
Hello, Mrs. Mitta.
Yes.
You know, a couple that-
Yeah.
You want to sit over here?
No, I'm just gonna move the easel, I think. I should have done it for Paul, but I decided not to. Stick it out, Mom. We're behind the door.
Watch yourselves.
It's all fun and games till we get them.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to naggle myself here.
Well, if you'd like to be, if you'd like to come to the table so you can put the book there, by all means, come ahead.
Hi.
All right. So I gave everybody our budget, and the thicker one that's right here is more of what's in our book. It's not going to be as beautiful a presentation as Paul's.
Mine goes for more money.
I know.
I had to be nice.
I know. All right. How do you want to do this? Do you want to go through every line item? I can start with the Board of Selectmen's budget. We have minor increases and decreases through the Board of Selectmen budget. So there's an overall decrease of $199.
In the total budget?
No, just for the Board of
Board of
Selectmen.
Selectmen.
It's on the
This
top.
page, not that. This page is sort of like.
Just put that
How good am I for you, huh? All right.
Oh, I see.
Do you see where?
Yeah.
Okay. You want to go down? We also have gone through the line items at our last selectmen's meeting. We tried to go, it's torturous, like Paul said, it's torturous to, we cut down in many places as we can. There's certain places that we can't. Same thing, there's fixed costs, can't go down in those. So if we go down to the probate line item, that is an item that's based on Stafford residents who use the probate court services. So that's a number that we can't do anything about. We have our IT, our technology. He has an $800 increase due to a Windows software updates and licensing fees. So he's pretty good. Our departments were very good in coming in and cutting where they could. We have, the next line item is registrar of voters. And I understand they came in last year with a double salary budget for themselves last year. So this year we have a decrease of over $6,000 over the previous year, consolidating some of their accounts. So we picked apart certain things and consolidated certain things, and they decreased their budget by $6,270. The town clerk's budget for the elections, she has stayed the same. Flat budget, no change. See that? Some of them refer to where it goes back. Okay. The Board of Finance budget, we didn't receive the budget. We reduced the legal notices, office supplies based on past history. What we tried to do is go back 3 years, sometimes 4 years in the budgets to find out how much was used in certain items. Some people had the same amount in a budget for every year. So, and they haven't used anything. So that's what we tried to do. I know last year when they came in, Tony brought in, he did the same thing and brought in, tried to cut as much out of all the budgets that he could. So it was left to be very difficult trying to find areas to cut. The 140, the assessor's office, she had a $470 increase. She had different various changes in line items in that conferences and meetings, they have more to go. And I would like to say, our assessor has earned, what is it that she earned? For her seat, her number 4. She has done wonderful. She went to school and she earned her, one of the top, is it the top degree?
Do you know what it's called now?
What is it?
CCMC2.
CCMC2. So I just wanted everybody to know that's pretty difficult,
It's very difficult.
very, very difficult, and so she should be applauded for what she did. She's doing a great job in that office. I just wanted to say that, even though she increased it by $470. The Board of Assessment Appeals, elected salary line, no change on that one. The tax collectors, line item, there was a decrease of $2,000, a change in billing, and the decrease in the summer help. So, she has some of their, and Aaron can probably talk to this, they have a change in the way they do their billing, they send it out now to do a lot of their billing. So, there was not a problem decreasing their help on that one. The treasurer's office, there was no change at all in the treasurer's office. Legal services, there was no change in legal services. The next page, the town clerk. There was a $1,400 increase for document filming. They had no choice, you can just go to that if you want, and you can probably do it easier than you guys can find that for what her. Let's see. For machine indexing, it's up on that one, but it was all because they have no choice. They have to document all their, they have to film it. They have to have everything done. So she had no choice and had a $1,400 increase in that one. For buildings, there was a $7,450 decrease. There was a large increase in water costs. There were 7 new hydrants, if you can see there. That was approved last year, but there was a decrease in building maintenance and repairs.
There's a decrease in building maintenance and repairs with all of the older buildings we have in town. That's hard.
It is hard. Very difficult.
I don't, truthfully, I don't know how Bruce keeps them all up and going.
You're absolutely right. And I sat with Bruce.
I don't know how he does it.
And I agree with what Paul said. We're gonna keep, or in what you said, we're gonna keep robbing Peter to pay Paul, and that's what's been done forever, and our buildings are gonna go. And I agree, we're probably gonna be hit with an increase, and the people need to understand that these buildings are sitting there, and that keeps getting cut. We have fuel for all the buildings, fuel oil and propane, there was no change in that one. The fixed charges, there's $106,964 increase. This was submitted by the CFO, I think that was in there too. There was an estimated 10% increase in the fixed charges. Capital outlay, there was a $45,500 decrease. The Energy Committee has 17-18 money to spend. We're working on grants for bridge repair, and the money will be budgeted for its match. Judgment and losses, there was no change in that one. Safety and protection, we have a $1,000 decrease in that one. We just took out of civil preparedness, which there was extra money, we did histories on a lot of these. Police protection, there was $17,235 decrease. It was a decrease because we lost one resident state trooper. Emergency services, there was a very small decrease. The volunteer departments between the ambulance and the fire departments are doing such a great job staying on budget. They're doing just phenomenal with what they have. The fire marshal, he had a $1,500 decrease. There were little things in his line item that we did a history and he hadn't touched in 3 years, so we took that out. Building and zoning, wetlands departments, there was a small decrease overall on that too. They took stuff out of uniforms, on miscellaneous. Transfer station, there's a small increase, coverage for sick, vacation. They're down people in there. It's only a 3-employee department, so we have to increase that. Needs to look at it after that. General highways, they have a decrease, possible small increase will happen if there's a lease purchase is processed this year. It hasn't happened yet. We haven't allowed them to do it, but there is a lease purchase in there for a vehicle.
For what kind of thing?
Whatever vehicle he needs to get. He's talking about, I think they need a plow truck. Their oldest truck, it's 2008.
Well, they need to hold on,
Right.
there are grants that are coming up, there's
Yep.
a Volkswagen emissions settlement, and the town could very well get a free truck
Perfect.
if they can wait.
Yeah, that's why we put it, it's a decrease, but we don't know. I will note that. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Can you see the person?
Thank you, Mayor. County to roads shows no change. However, we get the town aid to roads money that comes in twice a year. We got our first portion of it, and we may not get the second portion. I have a letter that says because of what is going on in the budget, that they don't know. I have a letter here if anybody needed a copy, but it said the second payment, which would have come from the STO bonds, has been indefinitely postponed. Now, it's due to the spending reduction plan put in place. They still don't know, but as of right now, we don't know if we're gonna get that second portion of the town aid to roads.
Is that part of the holdback that they already figured, or is there additional?
It's additional.
It is additional.
How much would our bill be?
I think a year, we get somewhere close to $400,000, so it's,
Half of that?
yeah, it's like $196,000. We got a portion of it in the beginning, and I got that letter stating that it's gonna be held. They don't know. It could be released, they don't know. We're not sure if we're gonna receive anything. If they take that away, I agree with what Dave said earlier. I think we have to start planning on taking care of ourselves, because I worry if they take that away, are they gonna give it back? Can we rely on the state? If they take anything, are we gonna get it back? Right?
And you agree with taking care of ourselves in what capacity?
No, as what Dave said, we can't keep relying on the state. They keep taking more and more and more away from us.
Absolutely.
So do we leave that in the budget, or do we take it out? It's a wash, but,
I've been following what other towns are doing,
yeah,
trying to keep a, collection of best practices, or at
Yeah.
least different practices.
sure.
And a lot of them now are setting aside like a $500,000, $750,000 for what they call a contingency budget down the line in the future, because they're expecting the state aid to municipalities to drop even more.
Absolutely.
Tomorrow, you're gonna see the release of the report by the Commission on Fiscal Stability and Economic Growth. They're gonna recommend the mergers of towns or the creation of districts regional schools, they want pooled resources for highway repair, for heavy equipment purchases and so forth. So we don't know what's gonna come. The Republican position right now is absolutely no new revenue if it comes from taxes, nothing. I don't think it's, I mean, they can do it from now till November because it's a good election position, but after that, if anybody continues that, the state will fall apart. And the towns like ours, our surplus would be eaten up in a year and a half. I mean, there's no, either that or you'd be raising taxes 5-6 mils.
Absolutely.
It would be an astronomical effect. But the bottom line is, you're right, this may not come through, and the only thing is the governor is somewhat irrelevant now. They just ignore him, and they so-called bipartisan budget people in the House and Senate make up their own rules. So he's being responsible by trying to not increase the deficit, but that's a terrible blow to a town like ours.
It is.
You just can't, you know.
So that was,
happen.
that's why I show no change in that, but it's a, I mean, I don't wanna say it's a gamble. Do we take it out of the budget? Do we take that out, or do we leave it in? I mean, if we take it out when we get it, then we would have to go to a town meeting, I think, to get it back in place, so I don't know. I don't think anybody knows anything, I know.
No, we don't know yet,
No.
unfortunately.
No. So,
But like you said, it's really kind of a wash in the overall
it
budget,
is a wash.
because it's an expenditure and,
Yes.
a revenue, so.
So you're saying if you don't get it, you don't spend it?
Right,
Exactly.
Right.
exactly. So that was the gamble, do we leave it in there for next year? What difference, I guess it's a wash. If we don't get it, it's there, it just shows differently on the bottom line.
Really, in the end, it won't show any differently on the bottom line when you take one from the other.
Of
It
course.
shows a higher budget, but
It
at the same
does.
time, it doesn't make any difference. You take it out, it doesn't change with the mill rate change.
Exactly, of course. Yep. So I just wanted to let you know about that with the letter that I got. Okay, the rec commission, $100,000 increase.
And the major improvement is what?
Lights at the high school, I guess they've been coming for the past few years on that.
Yeah, they have. They have.
Yeah, it's now a safety issue if we don't get it done.
I can't hear
It's a
you.
safety issue if we don't get it done.
I do
And
understand
something
that.
happens, then we're gonna be in big trouble. We'll be liable. They are gonna have to be replaced. They're in bad shape. I mean, they've been up since 1979.
I had asked to see the engineering reports on it,
Yeah.
and I don't have them yet. So I do wanna see, one of the things that we had spoken about at the Selectmen's meeting was budget part of it for this year, and budget part for next year, and maybe either try to find somebody, a contractor that will do that, like do it and let us pay, or Tony had an idea of, you know, taking money out of, you know, somewhere else to pay it, but I don't know what to do. I guess, how many years ago, John, do you know, or Tony?
It's been in the budget for
Oh,
the
it's
last
been in
3
the
budgets
budget
we did, right, Tony? I mean,
quite a while.
We kept taking it out.
Absolutely.
Yeah. to the
Damien
point
would put
where-
it in and we'd take it out, and Damien would put it in, we'd
Well,
take it
that's
out.
why we hired the engineer to establish,
Right.
was it at the point where it was a safety concern, and do we have to finally get it done, and in essence, last year was it, really. So they won't sign off any further for this particular issue.
What's the cost of the lights?
Well, it was, that's why I wanted to ask, is it,
250,000 then,
right.
estimated 5 years ago,
That was the 50,000 last year was to go toward that,
50,000 was the track resurface.
Yeah,
so that had nothing to do with the lights.
So
right.
this has been coming up.
What did
for
you say
quite-
the lights were? Did we check that last time?
250, probably more, that was 5 years ago, they were $250,000 estimate, they probably had 300,000,
That's
that's
what
my
I'm
guess.
thinking, maybe.
So the 100 is gonna do what?
150 or 100,
Well,
yeah.
150.
Actually, be 150, yeah.
It would be, but it was only in there for 250, so.
Half
So
this
this
year.
would really only
Half
be a
this
down
year,
payment
half
on it.
next, yeah, or
Good.
We couldn't
Right.
actually do it this year, if we don't have all the money,
we
right?
haven't contacted.
You know me,
You never know, some people, somebody might do it, somebody might, if anybody has any ideas how to do it, but I don't think that we can let it go.
Well, this is at the schools.
Correct.
They have this capital improvement fund, isn't this the kind of thing that money's for?
Well, we talked about that.
That's what we did.
But we deplete that capital improvement that we've been putting $50,000 a year aside with, we eat it all up.
But if it's a.
It is a capital improvement, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's a safety issue.
But I think there was only part of that in there.
The 100,000.
It was 100,000 in it. So we still have to come up with maybe 200,000 if it's gonna be 300,000, so.
Yeah, I would hope that the grant writer is looking at options, because Talon, in fact, got a grant for their high school, similar idea,
Yeah.
1.4 million, I think. Ellington got that as well. There's money to be had, at least there may still be, and not just federal, state money. So I think there's opportunities for us to investigate, to find out if that money
I
is
just
somewhere.
talked to her the other day.
I would think this should be a priority, given the fact that it's a safety issue.
I agree. Just how long it takes for, you know, like, who knows, I don't know. The grant was, I did just speak to her the other day too about trying to do that, so that's kind of a key. But I just wanted to bring it up and let you know the situation in that one.
Okay. Yeah, actually, that's all the increase there.
It's all at once.
It's gotta stay there because as Gary said, it's a safety issue.
It is,
It's got to stay there.
Well, a lot of people walk and use the facilities
do.
up there too, so
You're
you might not get as much.
It's, well, you know,
pushback.
Sonny,
And if
you're
there's-
right, it's not just the school, because the whole
Right.
town uses that field.
Tons of people walk up there and do things, so it may not get as much pushback publicly that's on there. And it will have to eliminate any of our evening sports, which will impact
Sure.
the whole, that program.
Right, no Friday night football
No,
would be a.
and there's soccer,
devastating.
field hockey does their breast cancer
And
awareness.
the football
that raises
did
a lot
so
of
well
money.
last year.
Yeah, I think soccer uses it.
And it's not, well, not just about football,
After
but
the town
field
was there on
hockey,
Friday night.
they do fundraising, they give a lot back to the community, and all of that will come to a screeching halt if we can't be up there. Actually, it could impact the sports even more, because if it gets darker earlier, we won't have the lights to have them even doing anything up there.
Well, I think what Tony said too about the grants, supporting the really,
Absolutely, yeah.
I think we talked about that last year, I thought you were looking into that
Right,
already.
that didn't, yeah. And did you say it was patched? You said that they tried to patch some of the,
One of the light fixtures, that was a few years ago, there was an issue, and in fact, it in essence fell. So, yeah, we're not patching anymore, so
Right,
the
right.
question is, what do we have to do? But investigate grant opportunity in the meantime, knowing that there's a fully funded need for the safety criteria. And as you talked about sports, it's not school related only,
Yeah, it's
the
all-
soccer program for
Yes, it's
intramural
right.
stuff,
Right.
there's a ton of people that use it, so.
everybody walks, everybody.
Yeah, and it's not just the school.
No, it's not. So, we're gonna continue to look for ways to do this, but there it is, right there.
Hopefully we can find something.
Cross our fingers. Parks Department, $20,000 decrease, employee savings, and a decrease in new equipment. We took something out of that. Holidays, which is $345, $3,500 decrease overall, working on what events we want to have this year, as we gear up for the 300-year celebration next year. Economic Development, decreased budget of $200. We went back and looked for previous, back spending, and there was nothing there, so we had $200.
200,000, I mean, 2,000.
2,000,
Oh,
yeah.
sorry, typo. Thank you, Fran. Conservation Commission was a requested increase, but we're gonna keep it flat. No change in that, we're just gonna keep it the way it was. Arts Commission, it was a $1,000 decrease from what they asked for. Debt services, payment and interest on previously approved long-term debt, the CFO approved all those figures. Pollution abatement, it's a decrease, 3-year look back, not much was spent, so we took some out of that. Health services, North Central District Health Department, they charge us so much per person, and so they actually it went down, but they included $1,000 for the gas for the vehicle. The community center, there was an overall decrease of $1,660. Okay, family services. an increase of $22,775. It's the biggest increase in costs associated in the billing software and the medical prescriber cost. Just so you don't have to fiddle through everything. Did you see that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it has the billing services, they're going from 15 to 30.
For family services?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, $20,000. It's for a medical prescriber. They allow clients to receive medication. So that went up. They're getting new software so that they can do the billing themselves. That increase was $15,000. It's to cover the expenses of the new billing system, including purchase, staff training, and annual consultation fees. Costs have increased with the billing for the interns, so.
So if they're getting new software to do this themselves, is there a decrease in cost somewhere else? Because we won't be relying on a outside service, I imagine?
I believe that is their hope on that.
But we don't have the
let's see where they
decrease shown
see it.
here.
Let's see.
So is this number above and beyond any monies you receive for billing?
That's the expenditures, I don't.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this is
I
the
don't know,
revenue.
let me see, that's the expenditures, I don't
revenues
know
in
what
there.
the revenues are at this
Okay.
point. So I have no idea what they do all the credentialing, this is something that they've been working toward for the last few years, is doing this.
Yeah, just ask
I-
if there
I
should be a
did
decrease
talk to her.
somewhere.
Yeah,
Or is billing
My-
services what they're
My
paying?
guess would be we wouldn't see any benefit till next year.
right,
Because they'll do the software and the licensing, and then next year,
They will
we should see
have
a
a
decrease
decrease
in
next year.
what they're using
but I will find
to
out.
do their billing.
Mary,
So
on the
it says-
last page on the bottom, it says 240,000 projected based on current collection of additional
Oh,
building.
there we go, I didn't, okay.
So they're
You guys
anticipating
don't see that.
240,000.
Yeah, their projected income, Fran.
Okay.
$18,000 projected for 2018-19 based on the recent budget cuts and estimates from current allocations. They're still not finalized. Demus, $70,000 projection. Insurance collections, $240,000. But that still doesn't answer that, and I will find that out.
I'm assuming the billing service is what they're paying somebody else to bill,
Yes.
and that's actually going up quite a bit this year.
Yep. So,
It's double.
Part
I'd
of
just be
it's-
curious to know how they're,
yes.
Part of it's cost of software.
Yeah,
Part of it's cost and software, parts of
it is for the software.
Software and licensing.
After I talked to
Use the software vendor.
but I will find that out, I'll find that out for you, no problem. Transfer out, there was a $10,000 decrease. So, my goal, like everybody, is to come in as close to zero as I can. For right now, for the whole budget, we're $69,693.50 over.
Which you did come close.
We did.
Very close, huh?
We did. That's the library, debt services, and government.
And in your budget this year, the year we're in, do you have anything that you're gonna have at the end of the year left over that you can give back?
Yes, we should, and we did, that was actually some of the things in like talking with Bruce and for the buildings, you know, I wanted to know, we are on a freeze. So is there something that's gonna blow up that we need to do? I mean, I don't know how long we can keep holding this money.
Oh, I know some of the buildings are held together with glue and scotch tape, I'm aware
They
of
are,
that.
they are, and it's terrible, I'm sorry, it's terrible to have to sit with somebody like Bruce and sit there and say, okay, so tell me, do we need to paint this building? Nope, I guess we don't, because it's not a major catastrophe. So we do have money in some of their budgets. And I did talk about, did you put, you know, what can we, if we don't have the holdbacks, if everything like, you know, the stars align for the town of Stafford and we have no holdback, you know, then we could decrease the budget for next year. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
No,
interrupt you,
can
Dave.
I make a short announcement?
By all means.
Steve chose that. Everybody who leaves this room and supports the two budgets should be aware that you're gonna be running up against an enormous reaction from the public if we raise taxes.
Yep.
As irrational as it is, we know Tony and over a 2-year budget made every effort to cut as much as he could.
Absolutely.
You're coming in at virtually
Absolutely.
close to zero budget. The bottom line is, so many things are underfunded in this town, you'd have to be a fool not to know it. But the average citizen reads the Journal Inquirer, not the local newspaper, not the local people, but the editorial group. Chris Powell, his waste, everybody's laughing at the working man as they, you know, take their huge salaries from the municipal and state governments and go off and spend them Hawaii or something. They believe that any kind of increase is unjustified, and if you look at what happened to the last administration, they came in basically with 2-0 increases, they lost the election. So we may understand that here, but when you get up there, but you know, this is the Tea Party, the Fox News, everybody else telling you that government has to shrink and so forth. Both these budgets are responsible. People made a good effort to do what they could, and they're not enough. Everybody knows it. I mean, you compare everything we have with surrounding towns. The problem for Stafford is we don't have the industrial base or the commercial base. You look at the pie chart of where the money comes from. It's all coming from real estate, basically private homeowners who are, you know, some of them are strapped for money. We're actually foreclosing on houses with the Water Pollution Control Authority for people who are, you know, 5 or 7 years behind. They know something like $3,500, $4,500 and have never made an effort to contact us or pay. They can't even pay that much. So our task is gonna have to be to say to people, look, there's no free lunch. You know, you wanna have a road that's decent, you wanna have schools that are decent, you wanna have police protection, you have to pay for it. And there's certainly, I don't see anything elaborate or wasteful in any of the budgets. I mean, it just isn't. But we're gonna have to get out there, and it's not gonna be easy. Everybody here can say, oh, this is a good start and so forth, but when you get out there in the public and, you know, these people have been reading this stuff about the waste and the failures of government and everything, it's gonna make it much harder. And we're all gonna have to really work hard to convince people that, you know, these budgets deserve to pass. One thing also, I mean, there's already a group of people who are, and again, they're influenced by national politics, and state politics, not really what's happening in Stafford, but, you know, people are telling me they're keeping logs of all the town workers and where they are at different times of day and all this stuff, and there were supposed to be people here tonight presenting some of this material. We'll all have to be aware of that. Everything's gonna have to be defended. And, you know, these are people who don't understand in the real world how things work, but this is a critical point for the town, because if we can't get by this, if we've locked ourselves into a no tax increase, or no spending increase, not tax increase, but no spending increase model, we're just gonna go down the drain even further. We have to maintain what we have and try where you can to make gains and build on what we've got. And to go any lower or anything is gonna be a shame. So I hope you make the strongest possible presentation for, look, there isn't any waste here, we've done everything we can, we went through all the accounts, this is what we've come up with, and you know, everybody can see what the buildings and the roads are like and so forth. And maybe, you know, that'll be get us started in the right direction.
Thank you, Dave.
If we still have a Stafford. I mean, these guys are serious. I attended all those commission meetings. They really wanna have regionalization in several different
I
areas.
was just at a meeting
Yeah.
a couple of weeks ago, and they're pushing that
Oh, yeah.
everywhere. And we're such a unique town, and like what Paul said, we're the third largest area-wise.
I know, that's something people don't realize.
They don't realize that.
Yeah.
I know a few years ago, when I was looking at the grants for the medical cars, they were pushing to try to do it with other towns, and I'm like, you don't understand, it takes 20 minutes to get from one side of the town to the other, you can't. So.
Well, there is one good success, though. The Water Pollution Control Authority bought a piece of equipment. It's a radar, ground radar reporting thing with robots that can go into tunnels and, you know, into pipes and see where the breaks are. we shared that with Ellington and Vernon, and we got it for something like $100,000 total, and the cost of the equipment alone was $645,000 if you buy it new. We have it 4 months of the year, they do, and then there's emergency conditions where you can call it back, and so far it's worked tremendously well. The only problem will be when it starts to break down. They've agreed to, you know, share the cost, one-third, but right now it's brand new. It did work well. I mean, if you got that kind of funding, it would be worth trying in some areas.
There were other things that the Director of Public Works and I were adding, and it's kind of like what you said, Julie, there are places out there. There's some, it's not a grant, but it's in Texas, where they have through CRAW, they have bulk buying. All the other towns at these meetings that I was at, they were like, yeah, you guys bought this like a few years ago, and we bought the same thing for like less than half the price. So there's a lot of things like that that we can start doing.
Yeah, well, that does make sense.
It does, but anyway, thank you very much for
No, thank you.
doing that and then,
Thank you, both of you. The budgets were beyond what I even thought they were gonna be. You've done an excellent job. And as Dave said, if we could get out into the town and convince everybody that it's the best it can be,
Social media.
and there are things that we need and we have to do. And we don't want the schools to have to lose teachers, and we don't want the buildings in town to go down, so, and the roads, we've gotta do it.
and we're down employees.
Summers has already put out a supplemental tax
I
bill.
know.
Yeah, they did.
They did that.
So, we don't wanna do that, but we might have to raise it a mill or two.
But that's what they got.
Yes.
Jane, I have one
That's
question.
what I was at.
Hey, Jane.
But this is what we figured we were gonna get.
Jane,
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
I have one question.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Can I ask a question?
Ask a question.
Yes, by all means.
So the only, and Mary's done a great job to try to get the budget to zero, which we all tried to do before. Paul, similarly, the only issue I have though is, there's 3 union negotiations. The contracts have to be negotiated for 18. Now, Paul did an estimate of a 2% increase, but there's 0 increase showing in this budget, so that's a chunk of money that we're not really showing towards this budget, what that really exists. So she's done a terrific job with the different portions of where you can make cuts. It shows 0 increase for those roughly 35 employees. And they're terrific people who will do their best to hold the line about increases, but I think 2 is a pretty good average to show, at least so you have a factual number.
Oh, that wasn't built into this budget?
No.
Yes, it is, it's in the budget.
It is in the budget.
What
Where is
percent?
it?
It's in the budget, 2%.
The 2%.
Is it built in?
Yep.
Where, it's built in for the non-negotiated current contracts?
Yes,
Where's that, Beth?
special
It
compensation.
has been built in?
Yes.
Yep,
Oh, that's good.
Where is it at?
special compensation.
Good thing Beth's here, huh? Thanks, Brian.
Thank you. I was waiting for him to finish the call. I was gonna do Of course.
I think so.
So, I'm sorry, so has it changed from the selectmen meeting last week, when Mary said that there were no increases shown because we didn't know any? So have you changed the budget since the selectmen meeting that I was unaware of? Because
No.
last week's meeting, you said clearly, there's no increases shown because we don't know what we can estimate for a negotiation.
It's just not shown in the line items.
So I'm sorry, so there was an estimate in last week's meeting that I didn't see? You said there was no increase. I'm just curious where we are.
Mhm.
So there was, and you misspoke last week, or there's not, but now there is in this last week, which I was not made aware of. Which one is it?
I don't really remember.
There's a,
You don't remember?
there's a line item, 2670, 9971.
Yes.
Special, that's the
Yes.
special compensation
Yes.
fund? What was that used for in previous years? Tanya,
I wasn't here.
When
what was
employees,
that used for before, Tanya?
Where are we now? I'm just trying to figure out, I'm sorry, last week I was told there wasn't any increase shown. No estimate like Paul did today.
It wasn't shown in those line items. That's what you asked last week.
No, I said, was the salary
Transfer
increases
out, right?
estimate shown from last week?
Mhm.
And the answer was no. And we didn't show the state loss of 1.2, which I understand because you don't know.
Sure.
But there was no salary increase shown any percentage whatsoever.
Mhm.
But now today you're saying there is, I'm only asking.
I don't believe
Did it
that.
get changed in the last week, and I wasn't made aware
Mhm.
as the other elected official, so I'm just curious where it came from.
Sure.
Was it misspoken last week when you told me
Or
there was no
you
increase?
might have, maybe it was misunderstood.
I'll have to go back and see.
Yeah,
But
that's
believe me,
fine.
It came up
Absolutely.
knowing that there's 3 negotiated contracts that are.
Right, I remember it came up.
Right, but you showed 0 increase. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
verbatim what you said.
Sure.
So I'm just curious where we are today
Mhm.
when you're saying it's in there and it's special compensation. I'm just trying to get an answer here for
Mhm.
which one is it?
It's coming here. But, yeah.
No, there's no answer. You don't have an
Yeah. Transfer funds out.
I gave
that's
you an
what it
answer.
answer? Really?
I did.
So you misspoke last week.
Bishop, earlier
Oh, where is it now?
conversation, yeah.
Transfer out fund?
Where is it? I'm sorry, where are we at?
Okay.
Transfer
I want to
out
go.
six-
You wanna speak?
670. the first one.
670,
If that's what it is.
Next to
the
the
transfer
last,
out fund.
next to the last page.
Last week I said they weren't in the line item. It was there.
It wasn't in the end budget, it just wasn't in the line.
Haven't changed the budget since last week.
670,
Oh, yeah, transfer out.
9971,
Yeah,
40, so
Which
40,000.
one was it?
That's a set.
That's
So
right.
that's a salary increase, but
Get on my lap. Sorry.
That's the salary,
We didn't speak to it, Tom. We didn't speak to that
We
line
did
item
not
directly.
speak to that line item.
Directly.
no, I understand. I was just looking at the salary because I would have saw a salary increase for that. So I guess at next selectment meeting, we need to discuss it further
We
because
should.
it's pretty unclear. But I appreciate your efforts, absolutely.
Thank you. What was that number? Thank you. I keep forgetting. I dropped all my books.
So I guess the only other question I have is why would salary increases be shown at a different line item instead of salary? That's the only question.
good question.
New accounting
I'm
is
sorry.
okay, I understand that, but I'm just kind of curious. So people are gonna ask, because you know, everybody goes through this thing with a fine tooth comb.
I
Right,
understand.
so I've already had those questions asked of me, so I'm
Sure.
repeating what those questions were.
Mhm.
So, I would imagine that salaries ought to go under the salary line item, because people always are talking about, hey, what are we giving these union contracts, and are we
Mhm.
negotiating hard enough, and all that great stuff. That's why it's a little confusing, I think,
Sure,
for the
maybe we
regular
could
people to
discuss it
see
now.
this.
Go ahead.
Well,
We'll discuss
I mean,
it
when we
later.
present the budget, we can either add it in on that line item, or we can just
It's being
indicate that it's
negotiated.
under
It's being
9971,
negotiated.
that's the estimated 2% salary increases before the
Sure.
budget, before the negotiations take place.
Right, again,
That's gonna be
I apologize, I'm just.
One way or the
questions.
other,
No,
we
you're fine.
can
That's good.
tell them.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, 'cause they asked.
Just read it on that line item, or we can put it in the salary.
you're right,
I- I
because
think
people will
whatever.
ask.
Yeah.
I think the Board of Finance has their answer that where the increases are,
Yeah.
which is terrific, so I think it's something you guys need to figure out at the
Sure,
selectmen
thank you.
meeting.
Right.
Because we've got our answer where that is.
Thank you.
Now, if you don't wanna do it before negotiations, somehow put it in non-disclosure area.
Thank you.
So do we just have the transfers left?
So are you, one question to the chair, are you requesting that the Board of Ed people and the Selectmen return for Monday so that we can talk about what they're gonna be willing to give us back this year?
I know, that's exactly.
Well, I believe we got our answer.
We got our answer from the schools, I think.
Yes, and I believe,
The town,
well,
I didn't
actually,
hear any figure, I don't think.
the town,
Oh, I'm sorry.
okay. The Board of Education has already told us, Paul has told us that we're going to be getting back about $500,000 from the school.
Mm-hmm.
I did ask you, and
I-
do you have any really kind of a concrete answer to give us, or an estimate? The best guesstimate?
I don't. Can we get it to you Wednesday? We'll get
Well,
it
Monday,
Wednesday.
because we have to go into the the general, we're having a meeting Monday.
Well, no,
right?
we don't have to know what the time, we don't have to really know what either one of us is giving us back by Monday.
I mean, it
All
really
we've gotta
depends
do
what
by
we allow
Monday
Bruce
is
to
vote
do.
on
It does, that's
proposals
exactly,
for the Board of Ed.
because it's
Yeah.
Bruce, it's.
We have to decide whether we're gonna allow Bruce to fix some of the things that
That's-
he
I'm sorry.
wanted to fix. Before
Right.
you can give that number. I
So
mean,
I
there's a
think-
lot of money that's sitting there, but you can't just say we're gonna give it back if he's gotta replace a boiler
Right,
that
I have
we
to get
know
to you
needs to
more.
be done. I mean,
Well,
So it's,
I understand that, and I would love to say, go ahead and let Bruce fix all these buildings, but at the same time, if we get hit with $1.2 million,
no.
where's it gonna come from?
I know.
The only thing is, your repairs are not gonna get cheaper.
That's,
No,
that's the
I agree.
problem.
But, you know,
So you're
It's-
better
it's-
off getting some of them done right away.
Exactly. Mhm.
yeah,
The money,
we
the money's
talked to
there, I
Bruce,
think
you
you
know,
need to talk to Bruce.
let's prioritize what we really need.
I've sat
You know,
with him
give-
multiple times to.
Try and get that money appropriated to do what he has to do this year.
Yeah.
And try and,
I think as the Board of Selectmen, you guys can make that decision, what needs to be
Right.
done. With Bruce.
Thank you,
And then the
Steve,
lease
because it's not a
purchase
decision
Yeah.
we can make.
No, of course not.
We don't know the building. We
but it
don't know
affects the
kind of
amount,
repair
that we
around
can tell you we're gonna give you back,
Right.
that's the.
We don't
that's
know
the
what
problem.
what's coming before you with a plea that we've gotta do this with the building, and we've gotta do that. So we really can't make that decision, that determination, you've got to.
Right.
And as far as the Board of Education, you've made the determination, as long as Monday night we get some of those proposals through, then you can do what you said you could do.
And the other caveat being that I don't have additional special ed expenses.
Right.
Right now, again, the snapshot is, if today was June 30th, you're getting 500,000 back. Plus the 300 that you made
Right, right.
appropriate.
So, just a curiosity question, because it's all kind of accounting right now. If you're anticipating $500,000 back, why would we then reappropriate additional money?
Because I need to have those accounts accurately reflect what the needs of the school district are and make the baseline realistic. That 300 makes the baseline real.
So you're changing the baseline for future budgets.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So basically what you're asking us to do is to increase your last year's budget by 300,000,
This year's budget.
this year's budget, which is then gonna put the town in the position that we have a higher baseline
Yes.
that we have to fund.
No. The baseline right now is 815,000. If you give us the 300, then it becomes 1,115,000. If that 300,000 was in the budget last July 1st, then the increase that you would have been asked for tonight, instead of being 411,000, it would be 111,000.
I get that, but I understand the baseline thing, because the baseline goes by the amount you're appropriating every year is the baseline we have to use for the calculation for the state. So why would we want to increase that now if it's not gonna change that number? That's
Because-
my question.
Because 3 years from now, you're gonna be $900,000 in the hole if you don't move that baseline forward.
Well, I get
That
that.
can be reflected in next year's budget for you.
I've already increased it 200,000.
I'm sorry?
I'm just having a hard time understanding why we need to do that, or why that needs to happen.
No, as I understand it, that's $300,000 the state gave us to cover those costs.
Right.
And you want to put it in the right bucket.
That's it.
Exactly. Right.
To more accurately reflect today's reality.
I understand. I truly do. Dave understands. Do you understand? Okay. So possibly Monday night, if everybody thinks about it, we can explain it better on Monday night when we go to vote.
So if it's 300,000 there and 48,000 on the other side, which that has to be paid, does that mean we're taking 348,000 of our cash balance
No,
and giving it to the board?
you're taking it out of buckets that have already been identified and accounted for. It's money, it's
Lisa's
kind
already
of like
got
a
it
savings
accounted for.
How
account.
Lisa's explained this in the past, if there's already a bucket that's accounted for, just like we did with the roads monies this year, we don't have to go back and have it reappropriated, it's already there. We don't actually have to move it. If it's already assigned to something, we don't have to move it. That's not a requirement of ours. Just like that road money, we were able to put it and fund the road fund, but we didn't have to say, take it out of the cash balance to do it, because it was already there. So I don't understand why, if this is already So it's appropriated.
This is something Lisa has identified, and what I told you I was gonna do before Monday night is I'm gonna call her
Yeah.
and try to get a better explanation for you, but she has identified it and put it in a bucket, and I don't know which one she's put it in. So consequently, we might have to make it a decision to move it from the, wherever she's got it over into school.
Okay, getting confused just because I've never seen us move money from budget to budget within the school budget.
No, you're right, you haven't, but, this is a different altogether, so.
Get a new sheriff in town.
Huh?
Right, can I just ask, request of the selectmen that if you can give us some approximation, Monday, Wednesday, about something like what might be coming back, because we have to decide
Sure.
how we're
Do you
gonna
want me
fund
to
the
get to that
deficit.
Monday to you before the meeting, or?
Well, it would be great, if
Sure.
you can't Wednesday, we could wait till Wednesday, right?
Of course.
We need to know.
Yeah.
We need to at least have an
Or
estimate.
Bruce, tell him to have a good night's sleep.
And as far as Dave's question was, anybody from the Board of Education wanted to be here Monday night for the meeting to discuss this more, by all means, you're all, everybody's welcome.
What time, Jane?
7.
7:00.
7:00.
Are we going to the transfers now?
I may be a little late, but I will be here.
Okay? Sounds good. Yes. Okay, we have transfers in front of us, people. They're very few, and they're very self-explained. Thank you, Beth, by the way. So, we've already looked at them before they even got here, and, we have to vote on them. Here we go. Everybody seen them?
Yeah. Can we deal with them as a collective three, or do we have to?
Why don't we deal with them all, the three of them, all at once?
I move acceptance of the transfer request 2/6/2018 as presented to us in the memo.
Can I second?
Okay. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the transfers. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. All right. Anybody have any questions before we end this meeting, before we call an adjournment? Any questions we'll answer them the best we can. If we can't answer, we'll get the answer for you by Monday. Are there any? Any comments? Everybody's welcome.
Just thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I will take motion for adjournment.
I make motion we adjourn.
Second.